Factorizing by grouping pairs. Let's look at the following example. 6d minus 9r plus 2t to the power of 5d minus 3t to the power of 5r. So when you factorize by grouping pairs, you must group the two terms that have a common factor. So if we look at the first two terms here, we have a common factor between these two terms. And the common factor is 3. So we group them together. And now if we look at the last two terms, we have a common factor, and that common factor is t to the power of 5. So now we group those terms that have a common factor. So after we have grouped the terms that have a common factor, we are going to take out a common factor in each group. So now if you look at the first group here, the common factor is 3. We're going to say we take out 3 as a common factor. So after you take out the common factor, you always say the first term divided by the common factor. So 6d divided by 3 is going to give us 2d. And then now we have to move to the second term. The second term is negative 9r. So negative 9r divided by the common factor, that is going to give us how much? Negative 3r. So you are done with taking out the common factor on the first pair. So now you move to the second pair. So on the second pair, the common factor that we have is t to the power of 5. So you're going to say that I'm taking out t to the power of 5 as a common factor. So remember, you must put a sign here. If you are taking out t to the power of 5 as a common factor, that means t to the power of 5 is positive. Therefore, your common factor, it must come out with a sign. So that is why we write positive t to the power of 5 as a common factor. And then now you open the bracket to say now the first term divided by the common factor. Therefore, the t to the power of 5 will cancel the t to the power of 5, and then you are left with 2d. And then you do the very same thing to the last term. T to the power of 5 will cancel to the t to the power of 5, and then you will be left with minus 3r. So now, if you look at what we have, always when we are factorizing by grouping pairs, we will have a common factor in the brackets that we have opened. So if you look at this bracket here, we have 2d minus r, and then also on this bracket, we have 2d minus r. So that is our common factor in the bracket. So now we're going to take that bracket as a common factor. We say now the common factor is 2d minus 3r, and then we open the bracket. Remember, when you take out the common factor, you will say this term divided by the common factor, and then we know the common factor will cancel out the whole thing, and then you are left with only 3. And then we're going to do the very same thing to the second term, of which the common factor will cancel the whole thing, and what will be left is plus t to the power of 5. And this will be our final answer. So now let us look at the next example. Please feel free to pause the video and try the example before you look at how I do it. So let's say we have 9z minus 18m plus b to the power of 3z minus 2b cubed m. So the first step that you do is to identify which terms have a common factor. But now, if we look at these first two terms here, we can clearly see that we have a common factor because 9 can go here and 9 can go there. And then if we also look at these two factors, we have a common factor which is b to the power of 3. So that means we can group them like this to say this is going to be our first pair and this is going to be our second pair. So now we take out the common factor on the first pair. To say now the common factor on the first pair is 9. So if you take out 9 as a common factor, remember, you're going to say this term divided by 9, and then 9 will cancel that out. We will be left with z. And then now we say 18m divided by 9. That is going to give you what? It's going to give you negative 2m. Okay? And then you move on to the second pair. So on the second pair, remember our common factor is b cubed. So now you're going to take out b cubed as a common factor. Remember now, if you're taking out a positive common factor, you will write it as what? As plus b cubed. And then you open the bracket to say now, after taking out the common factor will cancel the b cubed and you will be left with z. The very same thing will happen to the second term here. The b cubed is going to cancel out and you will be left with negative 2m. So now if we look at our problem here, we actually have what is common inside the bracket. So we're going to take that out as what? As a common factor. So now our common factor is z minus 2m, close bracket, and then we open the bracket. So remember now, the common factor will cancel out with the z minus 2m, and we will be left with a. So this is going to be a here. And the same thing will happen to the second term. The common factor will cancel out the whole thing, and we will be left with what? With b cubed. And this will be our final answer. So now let us move on and look at the next example. Let's say we have 6x plus a plus 2ax plus 3. So remember, the first thing that we do, we identify which two terms have common factors. But now if we look at our first two terms here, they don't have a common factor. So now this means now I must look for what? For a term that has a common factor with the first term. And then if I can look at that, I can see now, okay, 2a has a common factor. So if I group the 6x with the 2ax, what am I going to group the a with? Because now I must group what? I must have two groups. So now I'm going to group the 6x with 3 so that I can be able to group the a with 2ax. So it is very much important that you have two groups that both have the common factor. So the first step here, it will be to group the pairs. So the first pair that we have is 6x plus 3. We take this 3, we move it to that side. And then now we are having what? We are having a plus 2ax. So now after rearranging our pairs, we can see that, okay, the first pair is this one and the second pair is this one. And on our first pair, we have the common factor as 3. So you're going to take out 3 as a common factor and we open the bracket. So now remember, you're going to say the first term divided by the common factor. So 6x divided by 3 is going to give us 2x. And then now you're going to say 3 divided by 3. So remember, if you say 3 divided by 3, the answer is 1. It's not going to be 0 there. You must indicate that the answer is 1. 3 divided by 3 is equivalent to 1. So that means we are done taking out the common factor on the first term. So now let us take out the common factor in the second pair. So in the second pair, we know that the common factor is positive a. So we're going to open the bracket to say now, if we take out positive a as a common factor, we are going to be left with what? We're going to say a divided by a, and that is going to give us 1. A divided by a is 1. Then we move to the second term to say now 2ax divided by a. So the a will cancel that out and you will be left with 2x. So now, if we look at these numbers that are inside the bracket, it seems like they're not the same. But now remember, if you have 1 plus 2, this is the same thing as 2 plus 1 because they are both equal 3. So now you can just first rearrange this to write it as what? As 2x plus 1 so that you have the brackets to be the same. So now let us first do that. We're going to say now this one here, we are going to leave it as it is. So it's 2x plus 1. And therefore we say now we just rearrange this bracket to be 2x plus 1. So please pay attention that we did not change any sign. So that is why we don't have to take out any common factor of a negative or anything like that. So we just leave this like that. And then now we can identify that we have a common factor which is 2x plus 1. So we're going to take out the 2x plus 1 as a common factor. And then we're going to get our final answer. So now the 2x is a common factor. So it's going to divide the first term. And then it's going to cancel out with the 2x plus 1. And you will be left with 3. So the very same thing will happen to the second term. The common factor will cancel with the 2x plus 1. And we are left with a. So this will be the final answer to the problem. So now let us look at a last problem. Let's say, for example, we have the following. Remember, stop the video and try the question before you can look at how I do it. So now, let's say we have 5xy minus 3y plus 10x minus 6. So the first thing we do is that we look at our what? Our pairs. Which pairs have the common factor? So now if we look at the first two terms, we have a common factor there as what? As y. So that is okay. And then if we look at the last pair, we have a common factor here which is 2, because 2 can go into both our terms. So now we're going to say this is going to be our first group of pair, and then this is going to be our second pair. So now we're going to take out the common factor on the first pair to say now the common factor on the first pair is how much? Is 2. I'm sorry, I mean it is y. So we're going to take out y as a common factor, and then we open the bracket. Then we are going to say the first term divided by y. So the y will cancel out with that y there. And then we have 5x. And then we do the same thing to the second term to say now negative 3y divided by y. The y will cancel the y out. And you will be left with negative 3. So after you are done with the first term, you're going to move on to what? To the second term. To say now, what is my common factor here? So now the common factor that you have is how much? Is 2. But now it is what? Is a positive 2. So you're going to take out the positive 2 as a common factor. And then you're going to say now the first term divided by 2. That's going to give us how much? That's going to give us 5x. Then you're going to say negative 6 divided by 2. That is going to give us the negative 3. So now if we look at what we have a common factor that is inside the brackets. So we're going to take out that as our common factor. So we have 5x minus 3 as a common factor. And then if we open the bracket, we know that on the first term, the common factor will cancel out that. And we'll be left with y. And then also on the second term, the common factor will cancel out that. And we'll just be left with positive 2. And then this will be the final answer that we get. Thank you very much.